Let the doors be open quand on ouvre le corps. Déclaration de députés, statements by members. L'honorable député de Pierre-Boucher.
The honourable member for Pierre-Boucher, les Patriotes, Verchères. Mr. Speaker, by voting for Bill C-29, the 40 Liberal MPs from Quebec have taken off their masks. Conservatives in Quebec weren't able to come to their defense either. No, we couldn't count on them to defend the Consumer Protection Act in Quebec. Quebec couldn't count on them when the Minister of Finance decided to attack our way of defending ordinary people. Canadian banks are happy, of course, thanks to the 40 Liberal members from Quebec who are doing what they want. This is undignified of MPs who have the privilege of representing Quebec ridings in Ottawa. The 40 Liberal members from Quebec have taken off their masks. They are working for Ottawa and nothing else. They could have defended Quebec's interests, but they didn't. Now we know what needs to be done.
Member for Guelph.
Mr. Speaker, today I'm honored to rise in the House to recognize the 50th anniversary of Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic High School in Guelph. Lourdes is probably best known for its National Leadership Award that annually is designed to inspire students towards leadership as a part of their civics program. Started by now retired teacher Joe Tersini, this award has been bestowed upon such great Canadian role models as Senator Romeo Dallaire, the tragically hip Gord Downie, world-renowned scientist David Suzuki, our current Prime Minister, and this year, Canada's Chief of Defence, General Vance. Lourdes 50th is a time to celebrate the students of the present and reunite the graduates of the past. Congratulations to the wonderful community of staff, teachers, and students at Our Lady of Lourdes Catholic High School, building today's leaders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister of Natural Resources seemed absolutely perplexed why we weren't sitting down on bended knee thanking him for approving 2 existing pipelines. Well, I'm glad to have the opportunity today to give credit where credit is due. And Minister, thank you for approving Kinder Morgan and the Line 3 replacements. Now I would like to ask if he would like recognition for some of his other achievements as well. Does he want praise for the 100,000 lost jobs and double-digit unemployment rates in Alberta under his watch? Does the minister want to thank him for the $60 billion in investment that have left Alberta already? Should Canadians thank him for bypassing the National Energy Board and politicizing decisions on major energy projects like Northern Gateway, increasing the likelihood that more investment and more jobs are going to leave Canada? Finally, I look forward to the day when I can say thank you, Minister, for appointing the new National Energy Board review panel that will review the Energy East project. Unless, however, that political decision has already been made to deny that project, and if that's the case, thanks for nothing.
Honourable member for West Nova.
Mr. Speaker, the citizens of West Nova are proud of their military history and of the 14th Squadron based in Greenwood and the contributions of its members to the civil and military community.
The Treasury Board and I broke ground on a new $34 million air traffic control tower and announced an additional $4 million for infrastructure upgrades at 14 Wing Greenwood, the largest air base in Atlantic Canada. Ongoing investments will help ensure that military members have the necessary facilities to train, work, and live in the Annapolis Valley for years to come. With the holiday season fast approaching and most Canadians making plans to celebrate with family and friends, let's remember the men and women in uniform who continue to serve our country, protecting our rights and freedoms, both at home and abroad.
Thank you for your devotion to our country. We are extremely grateful to you.
Canadian forces and their families, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Honourable member for Churchill, Kiewit-Nookasky.
Mr. Speaker, they say a week is a long time in politics. Last week, people power prevailed to the south of us. The Standing Rock Sioux and their allies, including many Indigenous people, from across Canada were victorious in opposing a pipeline through their lands. Thanks to the activism of many, President Obama listened and acted. But here in Canada, it was the opposite. Our Prime Minister, who promised us real change, reneged on his commitments, broke his promise to First Nations, and disrespected many in supporting Kinder Morgan. That case, corporate power won. But what he and his government should know is that times are changing. More and more Canadians are being pushed to the margins. Inequality is growing. And in response to the injustice that people experience, more and more Indigenous people are resisting, more young people are calling this government out, and more Canadians are saying things need to change. So people are saying we need a movement to stop the corporate agenda that's holding us back. We need leadership that lives up to the aspirations and expectations of the people. And I have no doubt from what I saw last week that people power will...
Honourable Member for Halifax.
Mr. Speaker, as you know, our hometown of Halifax has recently seen a troubling string of gun-related violence. When our community is hurting like this, it can be difficult to know what the next steps should be. Well, Mr. Speaker, a young man in Halifax has come through at a time when his community needs him most. Quintrell Provo is an anti-violence activist and the founder of Stop the Violence. After the tragic killing of his cousin Kaylin, Quintrell began his years-long quest to spread the love through Halifax and beyond, not only through his Stop the Violence clothing brand, but through initiatives like the Stop the Violence March and the Spread the Love social media campaign. In difficult times such as these, Quintrell and other dedicated anti-violence activists have shown strong community leadership in Halifax, and we are deeply grateful for it. Thank you, Quintrell, for stopping the violence and spreading the love.
The Honourable Member for Provencher.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this week, my family celebrated the miracle of a new life with the birth of our grandson, Hudson George Falk. As Christmas approaches, Canadians from across the country will soon be gathering together as families to celebrate all our many blessings. We truly have so much to be thankful for. But, Mr. Speaker, Christmas is more than just a celebration of family. Christmas is a celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ and his beautiful promises, promises of a new life, promises of inexplicable joy, promises of a peace that surpasses all understanding, and promises of everlasting life. As a country, may we continue to focus on Christ's unchanging message, a message from 2,000 years ago, which is the foundation that our great country Canada was built upon. As carols fill the air, church bells echo all around, let's also take a moment to pray for all those around the world who are less fortunate and for those who the promise of peace seems so far away. May the miracle and gift of Christ's birth fill everyone's hearts with love, joy, and peace this Christmas. Mr. Speaker, to this House and to all Canadians, Merry Christmas.
The Honourable Member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, the verdict is in. CETA will bring real jobs and benefits across Canada, and particularly in Atlantic Canada. Duty-free fish and seafood products are big winners for sure, but so is a lot of New Brunswick Southwest. Located as we are, bordering the U.S., we are the gateway between the European Union and the American markets, a combined population of 1 billion people. Our chief negotiator said it best, so I quote, "We expect significant new traffic coming into Canada. It's largely going to come through the eastern ports. We want to make sure that those eastern ports are able to handle that increased level of traffic," end quote. So let's work together to identify the infrastructure that we need for the future. That is how we all win with trade. Mr. Speaker, New Brunswick's fishermen just landed a big one. Thank you.
Good job, Karen. The Honourable Member for St. John Rothsay.
Mr. Speaker, today I want to address a topic on which we all should be able to agree, child literacy. I am proud to be an advocate in the effort to tackle poverty. I am proud to be part of a government helping families in need with transformational measures like the new Canada Child Benefit. But some areas require more. We need a plan, not to alleviate, but to end poverty in Canada. A national early learning strategy is key to breaking the cycle of poverty. We are developing an early learning prototype in St. John Rothsay. We propose to pilot and measure a program in 3 early learning centres in 3 priority neighbourhoods in my riding. I know that alongside of Literacy New Brunswick, Dr. Aaron Scryer, the YMCA Shiloh Boucher, Rob Moyer from the University of New Brunswick and St. John, and our provincial partners, we will develop a model that can be rolled out across the country. I don't want St. John to be known as a city with the highest child poverty. I want St. John to be known as a city that solved this poverty problem and became a model for the nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Invictus, Latin for unconquered. On September 23, 2017, Toronto will host the third Invictus Games. This international adaptive sporting event for wounded, ill, and injured veterans and active duty service members was created by His Royal Highness Prince Harry in 2015. There will be over 17 nations competing in 12 sporting events, and Team Canada will be represented by over 90 athletes. Harnessing the power of sport helps wounded warriors on their journey to recovery, physically, psychologically, and socially. Hosting the Invictus Games will play a key role in empowering our wounded warriors and activate the powerful gratitude our country has for its servicemen, women, and families. I would like to congratulate all competitors, past and present, as they prepare, and personally commend them for their unconquerable spirit and express my gratitude for their service to their country. These wounded warriors are inspired by the following words: I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul.
The honourable member for Cumberland-Colchester.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As you well know, the forestry sector is the backbone of many rural Atlantic communities. Without forestry jobs, some of the communities in my riding would virtually cease to exist. American lumber producers have now recently filed a complaint against Canadian producers. They've done so before many times, as you know, and lost every single time. While negotiations continue, the Canadian industry braces for a downsturn. But, Mr. Speaker, it is critical to Atlantic lumber producers that we maintain the exclusion that recognizes the Atlantic forestry practices are no different than the Americans' practices. That's the deal we've always had, and that's the deal we're hoping for again. So I urge the Government of Canada to continue its efforts to ensure that our trade in forestry products with the United States remains fair, free, mutually beneficial. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Avignon-Lamitis-Matane-Matapédia.
I would like to congratulate the Haven House, which celebrates its 25th anniversary. Since 1999, the Haven House has provided a safe place for women and families in the Mi'kmaq community of Listugush. Domestic violence against women and children is not a new phenomenon, but it is one that requires commitment and dedication to prevent and ultimately eliminate. Helping victims of domestic violence with shelters, counseling, and health services, like those provided by the Haven House, is critical and essential to a community's well-being.
As a father of 4 young boys, I can appreciate and understand just how important Haven House's work in the community is, because they provide hope, comfort, and safety for the victims. As we enter into 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, I would like to acknowledge the remarkable work of Haven House, Françoise Gédéon, Carmel Vicaire, Blanche Martin, and Sheila Swanson.
And commitment to your community.
The honourable member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask this government to respect people in the regions. In my riding of Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier, the transport minister, since the election campaign, has been promising to deal with the Portneuf dock issue. This is a very important tourist attraction for the mayor, Mr. Nelson Bédard, the municipal council, and local residents. You know, this is the longest deepwater dock in Canada, but unfortunately, this piece of infrastructure is becoming worn down and increasingly unsafe. Progress has been slow. Since March 11th, there's been a developer ready for the transfer. On April 11th, the Department of Transport promised a response. Then I was told that I would get a response no later than August 8th, but I've still heard nothing. After 9 months of negotiation, can we finally get an agreement? I'd like the Minister of Transport to give a Christmas gift to the very patient citizens of Portneuf by dealing with this issue before the end of the year. Thank you in advance, Mr. Minister.
Member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, as we enter this holiday season with all the joy it brings to many, it is important that we not forget those less fortunate in our communities. For over 2 decades in my riding of Vaughan Woodbridge, the Vaughan Food Bank, operated solely by volunteers and funded by private donations, has ensured that those facing difficult times are not left behind. Under the leadership of Mr. Peter Wixon, a recent Order of Vaughan recipient, The Vaughan Food Bank serves approximately 750,000 meals annually and provides support to a number of agencies throughout York Region and the GTA. Mr. Speaker, I wish to thank the Vaughan Food Bank for all they do and to extend my warmest greetings to all my colleagues in the House. May they have a safe, healthy, and happy holiday season and a prosperous new year. Merry Christmas, Joyeux Noël, and Bon Natale. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, it is a shocking truth that it is more likely for a woman in our military to be raped by a fellow CF member than killed in enemy fire. In just the past 12 months, more CF members experienced a sexual attack or rape than were killed in combat during the entire Afghanistan mission. Statistics Canada reports that among regular force members, 27% of women and 4% of men have been victims of sexual assault at least once since joining the Canadian Armed Forces, with almost 10% of women sexually attacked or raped. None of these numbers include those who may have left the military due to sexual trauma before the Statistics Canada survey was distributed. Is it any wonder, Mr. Speaker, that there are now 2 class action lawsuits against the government regarding military sexual trauma? Both the Canadian Armed Forces and Veterans Affairs can and must do much more to prevent sexual trauma and to support those who have experienced sexual assault while serving their country.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 3 years after the tragedy of Lac-Mégantic, 2/3 of citizens there are suffering from PTSD as a consequence of the events of July 2013. According to specialists, the only way for residents of Lac-Mégantic to find peace is to heal the wound. In other words, redirect trains so they're not running through Centre Town, but rather through an alternate route. The Minister of Transport has repeatedly said he's open to suggestions about how to help residents. Mr. Speaker, the city of Lac-Mégantic has done its homework, and thanks to the incredible work of the project management team there are now solutions to accelerate the development of an alternate route. The Minister is aware of these solutions. The federal government needs to show leadership and take on this project. The citizens of Lac-Mégantic are in Ottawa today. Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the city of Lac-Mégantic and its citizens, I ask the Prime Minister to respect his word and to do everything possible to help these people who have already suffered enough.
Member for Don Valley East.
Mr. Speaker, on December 13th, His Highness the Aga Khan will be celebrating his 80th birthday. Au cours des 60 dernières années,
over the last 60 years, His Highness has espoused the values of Islam. He has devoted his life to improving humanity, building bridges between communities, promoting peace, diplomacy, and pluralism.
The Centre for Pluralism, which he established in Canada, is critical at this particular time. As a Muslim leader, he places great emphasis on the value of a knowledge society and the role of the intellect to advance the well-being of all peoples, irrespective of their faith or conviction. To quote the Honourable Adrian Clarkson, the Aga Khan is a man who is perhaps the only person in the world to whom everyone listens. Happy birthday, Hazimam. Bon anniversaire.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to announce a few facts. The Liberal Party of Canada makes a link between its political party and financing activities, and urges people to buy tickets so they can meet with the Prime Minister or a minister. Does the Prime Minister deny these facts, the Right Honourable Prime Minister? Mr. Speaker, Canadians can rest assured that our political party financing system is among the strongest in the country. The reality is that the level of openness, transparency, accountability required by this system is important to maintain the confidence of Canadians in our democracy and in our governance. And I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, that our party always follows all the rules and values and principles in this system. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
In May, the founder of Wealth One Bank of Canada, a Chinese billionaire, attended a Cash for Access event with the Prime Minister. 2 months later, his bank received final government approval to start business in Canada. Another guest at this same fundraiser donated $1 million to the Trudeau Foundation, $50,000 of which is to build a statue of the Prime Minister's father. Under these terms, does the Prime Minister understand that this is not only unethical, it's more than likely illegal, or does he just not care anymore?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
I know, Mr. Speaker, that there are a lot of questions about these issues, but that's why it makes me happy to reassure Canadians that indeed we have among the strongest political financing rules in the country, which means that Canadians have confidence in the transparency, openness, rigor, accountability of our system, which this party has always followed and always will follow.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, in September, a prominent Liberal organizer sent invitations to a fundraiser with the Prime Minister. In those invitations, he said it was important to attend and donate to the Liberal Party, quote, so that our issues are heard and we begin to form relationships and open dialogues with our government. Not with the Liberal Party of Canada, with the government. The Prime Minister either understands that this is unethical and potentially illegal, or he is just willfully breaking the rules. Which is it?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, with all these questions, it's important to reinforce the fact that at the federal level we have among the strongest principles and rules around fundraising in the country, and that those rules are always followed. This is important because Canadians need to have confidence in the transparency, accountability, and secureness of our political financing system. Canadians can and must be reassured.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, at a November fundraiser, the organizer told the media that he offered to host the event after the Prime Minister invited him to meet with high-ranking Chinese officials. At that fundraiser, the Prime Minister was lobbied directly on the billion-dollar takeover of a Canadian business that is currently before Cabinet. He was also lobbied to change the rules for immigrant investors and foreign real estate investors. Based on these facts, this is not only unethical, it's illegal. Does the Prime Minister really believe that he's above the law? Good.
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
I'm pleased, Mr. Speaker, to rise today to reassure Canadians that the federal level in terms of political financing has among the strongest and most rigorous rules in the country. That allows for openness, transparency, accountability that can reassure and reinforce Canadians' confidence because those rules have always been and will always be followed by our party.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Order.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not feeling more secureness because the Prime Minister actually himself confirmed what we're saying. When I asked him about the May fundraiser with Chinese billionaires in Toronto, he said, and I quote, "That is why we have committed to engaging positively with the world to draw in investment." Exactly. But, Mr. Speaker, Liberal Party fundraisers are not the place to draw in foreign investment. Why is the Prime Minister so blatantly and so eagerly thrown his ethical guidelines out the window?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the frustration Canadians felt around ethics was part of why we got elected in the first place. And therefore, it's so important to reinforce for Canadians that the rules are always followed, the values and the principles that underscore the strong financing rules that exist at the federal level, stronger than just about anywhere else in the country, can reassure Canadians that we have a system that works to make sure that we are worthy and upholding the public trust.
Honourable Member for Outremont.
It's great to see the Prime Minister, really. And you know, I feel kind of lucky because I didn't have to pay $1,500 to get in here. So, on behalf of all those Canadians who don't have $1,500 to get access to the Prime Minister, a very simple question. Will he now admit that he has used his official position to pour hundreds of thousands of dollars into the coffers of the Liberal Party of Canada.
The right honourable Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, it's important to reassure Canadians that we have at the federal level some of the strongest, most stringent rules around political fundraising of anywhere in the country. Canadians know that they can have confidence in members in this House because we follow all those rules and understand the values of openness, accountability, transparency that are required in order to maintain Canadians' trust in our governments.
Honourable député d'Outremont.
Honourable member for Outremont.
Leader.
With C-29, the Prime Minister seeks to remove protections by the Quebec legislation for Quebec families that are already among the most highly indebted of the G20. The Prime Minister is attacking the Quebec Consumer Protection Act. Why? To help the banks? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Our budget implementation bill is important because it will deliver the economic growth Canadian needs. After 10 years of lack of adequate growth for the middle class, for those who are working hard to join it, we established a budget that invests in the middle class, that understands how to build a strong economy, how to protect Canadians, and that's exactly what we're going to do by creating opportunities for the middle class and those who work hard to join it. The Honourable Member for Outremont. You don't need to remove the Quebec Consumer Protection Act to do that, Mr. Speaker. This, be it with his promise to form the most ethical government on planet Earth or his solemn promise to change the electoral system, this Prime Minister seems perfectly at ease with breaking his word. He's only been in office for a year. My question for the Prime Minister is very simple. Does he think that it's important to be here for question period? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has a lot of responsibilities, and a large part of those responsibilities is to be present to hear questions from his colleagues in the House of Commons. But I'm also very pleased to have a very strong cabinet, ministers who are here to answer questions. And I'm very proud of the fact that I'm constantly engaged with Canadians across the country to listen to their concerns and work with them in order to build a stronger future. We made a commitment to building a new, better middle class, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, coding with Shopify. Speaking of respect for Parliament, respect for democracy, the Prime Minister's speech from the throne stated clearly that, quote, 2015 will be the last federal election conducted under the first-past-the-post voting system, unquote. My question is simple. Was he lying?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I answered that question in the positive, in that, yes, I'm committed to restoring, to making sure that November 20...
Order, the Right Honourable Prime Minister. We have to hear the answer. Order.
Mr. Speaker, I have said many times that 2015 will be the last election held under first-past-the-post. The fact is, I do want to go back to an offhand comment the NDP leader made that demonstrates his lack of respect for our economy. The fact that he doesn't understand that investing in good Canadian businesses, investing in coding, making sure that we have opportunities for our youth is something to joke at, is irresponsible.
I remind members to be judicious in their language and that we do not accuse other members of lying, deliberately misleading the House. The
Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, it's quite clear that the work of a Prime Minister merits that we respect the duties of the Prime Minister, and I'm sure the Prime Minister will continue to do that. But once again today, Mr. Speaker, another fundraising activity involving him, this time in Montreal. The organizers publicized the fact that it gave participants access to the Prime Minister if they paid $1,500. Will the Prime Minister realize that when people do that, it stains the image of the Prime Minister's office? The Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we undertook unprecedented public consultation in order to meet the challenge of Canadians. I can assure Canadians that fundraising activity rules are the strictest in the country, and we follow those rules. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, once again, perhaps it's unprecedented for the Liberal Party, but I had the honour of serving in a government that crossed the country all year long and prepared a budget with Minister Flaherty. We travelled across the country. Maybe it's unprecedented for the Liberal Party, but not for the Government of Canada. But giving access to the Prime Minister for $1,500 in order to be able to speak to him, maybe that's unprecedented. Now, we realize that giving access to the Prime Minister for money is contrary to ethics. The Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, our government will continue to consult and engage with Canadians because we must meet the challenges they face. The Chief Electoral Officer stated that the Canadian political financing rules are among the most advanced, strict, and transparent in the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So, Mr. Speaker, the ethical ship the Liberals sailed in on is sinking like the Titanic. Day after day, more and more people are coming forward admitting they have paid to play with this Prime Minister. It's abundantly clear to everyone the Prime Minister has never intended to follow his own open and accountable government rules. So, when will the Prime Minister stop the charade and put an end to these unethical, shady, cash-for-access events?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, this government will continue to engage with Canadians. This government will continue to consult with Canadians. This government will continue to respond to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing. And I can assure Canadians that when it comes to the rules governing political financing, they are amongst the strictest across this country, and this party, this government, will continue to follow the rules. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Whether it's hosting elites, high-priced lawyers, or Chinese tycoons, Liberal fundraisers are marketed as a chance to lobby the government. An IT startup entrepreneur was told that $1,500 would get her close to the PM and his rich friends. That is cash for access. The Liberals' response is an endless loop of "we have some of the strictest rules in the country." We know the rules, Mr. Speaker, because Conservatives wrote them. But the Prime Minister set his own rules for him and his ministers. Will the Liberals finally admit their promises and their rules aren't worth the paper they're written on?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
The opportunity to say time and time again, and I appreciate the opportunity once again to remind Canadians and to assure Canadians that when it comes to the rules around political financing, they are amongst the most strict in this country. This party, this government will continue to follow the rules. This government will continue to respond to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing, and I'm proud to have some of my own constituents here on the Hill today, and I'll continue to work hard for them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Opposition House Leader.
Speaker, the Government House Leader gets up day after day after day and repeats the same lines over and over. Lines that the Prime Minister...
Order. I don't know if you all know, but Santa Claus is on the Hill today. And I had a chance to talk to him, and all I asked for was a little peace and tranquility. So let's have a little bit of that while the Honourable Opposition House Leader asks her question.
Repeating lines that the Prime Minister has asked her to say. Words that she knows are not true. The Liberals are not following the rules, and she has to know it. Will the House Leader show the integrity and the leadership that I know she has? And I ask if she will admit that the Liberals need to clean up their act, or will she at least tell the Prime Minister that she's not going to keep doing his dirty work for her?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Government that has lowered taxes on the middle class, that that respects the environment and understands that we can do more to protect the environment, that recognizes that we need to grow the economy and create the growth that Canadians expect us to create. The member knows very well that when it comes to the rules around political financing, they are amongst the most strict in this country. We will continue to follow the rules, and I encourage the member, let's get to work and do the hard work Canadians expect us to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, repeating Liberal spin and outrageous comments 1,000 times don't make them true. And frankly, it's embarrassing to watch the House Leader allowing herself to be used by the Prime Minister like this. She can tell him no, after all. The Prime Minister is breaking fundraising rules. The media knows it, the public knows it, even Liberal donors and supporters know it. Is there anyone on that side of the House who has the courage to stand up for what is right, and tell the Prime Minister to stop this corrupt fundraising?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, it's interesting because the member recognizes that I am reminding Canadians, assuring Canadians that when it comes to political financing, we have some of the most strict rules across this country. What's more interesting is that the member chooses to keep repeating the same question, but doesn't understand why she gets the same answer. I have confidence in her as well that we can work together in this place to serve Canadians and to respond to the very real challenges that they are facing. Let's get to work. Let's work harder for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, it seems like the Liberals have forgotten the definition of appearance of conflict of interest, but their phony survey on electoral reform is anything but scientific. A child could answer it, an adult could answer it, maybe 50 times if he feels like it. It's supposed to be anonymous, but in order for the answers to count, you have to give your gender, your age, your education, your sector of employment, your income, your language, your postal code, and whether you're part of a minority. This is worrisome to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner. If it's not scientific, if it's truly anonymous, why do they need all that information?
I'd like to correct the member opposite and assure him that providing demographic information is completely optional. And Mr. Speaker, all information provided by participants will be administered according to the requirements of federal policy laws and federal policies on public opinion research. Users of mydemocracy.ca can access the privacy information at the bottom of the page, which explains the information being collected, how it will be used. Mr. Speaker, the government will only be receiving aggregated data without any personal information. We take protecting Canadians.
The honourable member for Stina-Bulkley Valley. Order.
I wonder if the minister's even read her own survey, because if you don't give the Liberals all that private information, all of your answers are thrown in the garbage. Yeah. We got a call from Janet from Alberta today, and she said that when she called the My Democracy hotline, she was told that these survey questions were approved by the 12-member all-party committee. Well, that's news to me, because I sit on the committee and I can say we would never have insulted the intelligence of Canadians with such ridiculous questions. First, the minister threw the committee under the bus, and now the Liberals are trying to blame us for their terrible survey. Thank goodness the Privacy Commissioner is investigating. So here's a values question for the Prime Minister. Does he have the integrity to keep his own promise?
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, we are proud of the tens of thousands of Canadians who have engaged with mydemocracy.ca. We are proud of the Canadian political scientists who have helped develop this tool, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, this is a Canadian-made application informed by Canadian academic experts to engage Canadians. So far, it's working.
Order. The honourable member for Banff Airdrie.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the minister told us that we were visiting the wrong website. Well, she might even be right. Because if you took the democracy surveys at BuzzFeed or the Beaverton or even on the back of a cereal box, you'd get less skewed results than what you're getting when you're trying to pass off as consultation now. And then you wouldn't have to provide your gender, your year of birth, your household income, your postal code, or even give your firstborn child for it to be able to count. So the minister keeps telling this House that you don't need personal information to participate in the survey, but she didn't say those answers would actually count. So was she just using weasel words?
Again, I encourage members to be judicious in the use of words and language here in the House. The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, the Special Committee on Electoral Reform has good advice about asking questions about electoral reform, and I'm sure members have started to read the report, which says the committee was told numerous times that there's no perfect electoral system, as different systems emphasize different values. Recognizing that there is no perfect system, the committee used the values and principles set out in the mandate to develop its recommendations on electoral reform. Mr. Speaker, mydemocracy.ca is about empowering Canadians to have their say about electoral reform. I encourage all members of this House and Canadians to get involved.
The honourable member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My staff has researched the identity of Cliff, cited yesterday by the Minister as the defender of my democracy. It turns out he's Cliff Vanderlinden, the CEO of Vox Pop Labs, who was paid $250,000 to design it. Which is a relief, because at first it seemed she was referring to Cliff, the clueless mailman from Cheers. After all, due to the complete lack of security features, Bostonians like Cliff, Woody and Carla can participate in the survey. Norm can sign in without even leaving his bar stool. Given this lack of security, how can Canadians trust that the results of the survey are going to mean absolutely anything at all?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
I thank the member opposite for his question, and we are all thrilled that tens of thousands of Canadians are participating in mydemocracy.ca, and providing their personal information is completely optional. Mr. Speaker, responses will remain anonymous. Any data collected will be administered according to the requirements of Federal Privacy Act, and I encourage all members and Canadians to participate in this unique and innovative initiative.
The honourable member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Mr. Speaker, just to be clear, Vox Pop Labs are the folks who brought us the Vote Compass, the online survey notorious for telling participants they should vote Liberal. A Queen's University professor answered Vote Compass 5 ways and was always labelled a Liberal. Reports showed that any consistent answer to all 30 questions on that survey caused respondents to be labelled Liberal. As a result, the CBC Ombudsman warned about that data. It is challenging to interpret which uses were authentic and which ones might have been contrived. Given that mydemocracy.ca has all the same problems, will the Liberals just take this survey offline?
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, we are proud to be hearing from Canadians, as many Canadians as possible, about their values on their electoral system. We are proud to be working with Canada's political scientists in developing this tool, Mr. Speaker, and we look forward to hearing from as many Canadians as possible using this initiative and many others before introducing legislation in this House.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Tabasca. Mr. Speaker, when we hear the Minister, we understand why people are so cynical. This is what we read in the media this morning about the Minister and her new consultation process. The statements one is supposed to agree or disagree with are at best incoherent and at worst biased. This is the hypocrite's ball. This file is becoming a disgrace for the Liberal government that launched it. Those are not my words. These are political analysts and journalists saying this. Mr. Speaker, can the Minister tell us whether she will respect the public and hold a referendum before deciding to change the electoral system?
Mr. Speaker, I continue to appreciate the member opposite's passion for a referendum, and I encourage all members of this House to read the committee's report. Mr. Speaker, we will respond to that report in due course.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister had promised to be accountable, yet over the past year he has not answered any of my questions on young people. Whether it be Kinder Morgan, marijuana, jobs, election reform, the interests of young people are not reflected anywhere in the action being proposed by the Liberal government. And I'm not even talking about the many broken promises made to Aboriginal young people. In light of such inaction, if the Prime Minister doesn't want to be accountable, why doesn't he step aside and appoint a Minister for Youth who takes a true interest in young people? The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gives me an opportunity to indicate how proud we are that we have a Prime Minister who recognized a long time ago the challenge faced by youth and is taking it so seriously he's the Minister of Youth. Not only that, Mr. Speaker, we are proud to say that we have announced the creation of an expert panel on youth employment. They are going to be reporting in December, and it's only one of the initiatives that we are doing to help young people in Canada.
Order. The honourable member for Churchill, Tuet, and Nokaski.
So the question again to the Minister of Youth. When the Prime Minister gave himself the job of Minister of Youth, many young Canadians expected he would champion their issues. Over a year later, the Youth Minister has been one of the worst performing ministers in the Liberal cabinet. He's encouraged police to hand out criminal records for pot possession, backtracked on his promise to a fair new voting system, and is failing to address the very serious issue of rising precarious work among young people. So will the Prime Minister do the right thing and resign as Minister of Youth?
Honourable Minister of Employment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to put on the record that, in fact, we've invested $165 million in the youth employment strategy, $73 million for work-integrated learning, giving young people a chance to get the skills they need. $85 million for union-based training, $175 million transferred to the provinces for training, and $1.5 billion to increase Canada student grants. And this is only the first year in office. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Calgary Skyview. The honourable member for Calgary Skyview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on Saturday, the Minister of Infrastructure announced over $100 million in funding for Calgary public transit projects. Money aimed to specifically help plan and design the Green Line. However, all over Alberta, there are small communities who have never received any money for public transit. My question is to the Minister of Infrastructure. How will these small communities benefit from our historic investment in public transit? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Infrastructure and Communities. Order.
As a result of our close collaboration with the Government of Alberta and local municipalities, we announced public transit investments last Saturday for communities like Airdrie, Banff, Fort Saskatchewan, Fort McMurray, Red Deer, Strathcona County, Medicine Hat, St. Albert, Lethbridge, and more. Some of these communities, Mr. Speaker, are receiving transit funding for the first time in the last decade. Those projects will help grow the economy, create jobs, and build more sustainable.
It's order. It's been very quiet, generally speaking, during the questions, but not so quiet during the answers. And I ask members like the member for Grand Prairie Mackenzie, who was talking out loud throughout that last answer, and others to listen to both the questions and the answers. The honourable member for Carleton.
This week, the Finance Minister released a helpful PowerPoint presentation on the economy. It showed that in the last Conservative term in office, we were creating as an economy 15,000 net new full-time jobs on average every month.
Wow.
This year, we've been losing, on average, 2,000 full-time jobs per month. Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister promised that a big deficit spending splurge would create lots of new jobs. We got the big deficits. Where are the jobs?
Honourable Minister, Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to remind the member what we did to consult Canadians. As he said, in Budget 2016, there's more than 500,000 Canadians who engaged with us. We received more than 5,000 submissions. And, Mr. Speaker, yes, we'll come to the job if you're just patient. We put in the budget, Mr. Speaker, measures that are going to help Canadians, help the middle class, and the members knows well that our historic investment in infrastructure is helping to grow economy in our country, create jobs for Canadians. That's what we promised. That's what we're delivering to Canadians.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, he says that he'll come to the jobs in a moment if we're just patient. Well, Canadians are going to have to be very patient because it's been a year and they haven't created a single net new full-time job. In fact, in 2015, we added as a country about 12,300 net new full-time jobs per month. This year, we have lost a grand total of 30,000 full-time jobs. Mr. Speaker, all of this data can be found in the Finance Minister's own PowerPoint presentation. Will the Finance Minister turn to page 6 of that presentation, see the destructiveness of his policies, and reverse them?
The Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, talking about data, according to Stats Canada, since November of 2015, there's been 183,200 jobs that have been created, Mr. Speaker. We've seen 1,000 jobs at Bell Helicopter. We've seen 1,000 new jobs created by GM Canada. We've seen Thomson's Reuters commit up to 1,500 new jobs in Canada. You know why, Mr. Speaker? According to Jim Smith, the president and CEO of Thomson's Reuters, he said, "We applaud the government, the federal Canadian government, for their knowledge, their innovation, and making sure the economy is a priority. That is why we're investing."
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the situation for employment is worrisome, and the economic outlook is too. According to CBC, the Minister of Finance put forth information that's quite worrisome. 1.9% in a drop in job creation over the next year. And these are numbers that come from the Department of Finance. We know that the government has trouble providing exact figures. The government's refused to acknowledge that not a single full-time new job has been created since they've been in power. Can the Minister of Finance set the record straight for Canadians? Is Canada, in fact, looking at a 1.9% decrease in job creation over the next year? The Honourable Minister of Employment.
Indicate that employment has increased by 10,700 jobs in November. Unemployment rate has fallen by 0.2% to a low of 6.8%. Compared to November 2015, employment in Canada from over that year is higher by 1.0%. Clearly, we have a plan, and it's working.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Clearly, Mr. Speaker, the government doesn't have a plan because its plan is showing no job creation and its own outlook shows a drop of 1.9%. That's unacceptable. We know the government is good with secrets. And, Mr. Speaker, 13 times now I've asked the government when we're going to be seeing a balanced budget. So I'd like to take this opportunity to put a question to the Prime Minister. Can the Prime Minister reassure Canadians and tell them when we will have a balanced budget? Now, this isn't a $1,500 question. We're talking about $30 billion here. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for his question. There's one thing that isn't a secret. It's that the previous Conservative government left us with $100 billion in debt. And what we put forth to Canadians, Mr. Speaker, is a plan for economic growth in this country. Canadians have said, help us grow the economy, help us. This is what we did in Budget 2016, Mr. Speaker. It's what we did in the economic update this fall. The government is resolved to helping Canadian families to create jobs at home and to job growth as well, and what that government opposite couldn't do in 10 years.
River.
Mr. Speaker, a recent study echoed what Indigenous educators and leaders have been voicing for years. Improving the level of education and employment for young Indigenous people will boost the economy in Saskatchewan by $90 billion. Yet following federal cuts, the province of Saskatchewan redirected funding from NORPAC. This has students and staff uncertain about their future. Will the government help NORPAC to ensure it remains autonomous and thriving, or will they continue to leave the future of our young people at risk?
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for the question, and it is not a situation that I'm well aware of right now, and I would entertain the question and a conversation with the member after to see what we can do.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquet-Angers. Mr. Speaker, since the start, the Liberal government has refused to go out and get a better agreement for Canadians in the agreement with the European Union. They're going ahead even though there are several problems that haven't been resolved. Like dairy producers in Canada, winemakers in Canada will lose significant amounts of money because, in fact, of the concessions made by this government. When will the minister announce a plan to help winemakers in Canada to overcome the negative consequences of this trade agreement? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. CETA is a very progressive agreement. We will be monitoring the impact it has in Canada. We have already promised assistance to farmers in the dairy sector. We will monitor the impact of the agreement in this country.
Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the minister defended ripping 280 jobs out of Vegreville. Here are some comparisons. It's like removing 290,000 jobs from Toronto, 187,000 from Montreal, 113,000 from Vancouver, 60,000 from Ottawa, and 55,000 from Edmonton. This unnecessary and unfounded edict will hurt families, businesses, and communities in the region. When will the Prime Minister do the right thing and stop this cold-hearted, mean-spirited attack?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, we understand the impact of the Vegreville relocation on the community. We also understand the important work being undertaken by the member opposite in defence of her constituents. The testimony we heard at committee yesterday was very, very moving. We understand it will have an impact on the community members, and we are taking every measure possible to minimize those impacts. That includes guaranteeing a job for all of the workers who are currently working in Vegreville should they wish to work in Edmonton. We will continue to work with the member opposite in this regard and defend the workers of Alberta. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I can't help but get up because this member from Alberta asked the Prime Minister an important question about jobs. And I bet if it was 290,000 jobs in Toronto, he'd get up and answer it. Mr. Speaker, job losses are at an all-time high in Alberta, considering we probably won't see him again. The least he could do is respect Albertans, respect this member of Parliament, and get up and answer her question.
Order. Alors, I remind members that they're not to bring attention to the presence or absence of a member in the chamber. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague answered that question with full detail and a tremendous amount of compassion. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, the party opposite talked for 10 years about standing up for Alberta, and yet when we approved a pipeline that's going to make a difference in the lives of millions of Albertans, what did they do? They started talking about how it'll never get built, so don't bother investing, don't bother hiring people for it. They're talking down the economy of Alberta and real decisions we took for political gain. That, Mr. Speaker, is why people are disgusted with the approach that the members opposites are taking.
Order. Where's Santa Claus when I need him? The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, there's the Liberal arrogance that Albertans have come to expect from this Prime Minister. This Alberta MP asked a very good question about jobs. If it was 290,000 jobs in Toronto, he would have been paying attention and he would have answered the question. She deserves the respect. Albertans deserve the respect. Why doesn't he get up, do the right thing, and give the people of Vegreville their jobs back?
Honourable Minister of Economic Development. Order.
Speaker, it's an honour and privilege to serve with 4 outstanding MPs from Alberta who are fighting every single day for Albertans, Mr. Speaker. They are the ones that make sure we have stabilization funding. They're the ones that are making historic investments in infrastructure. They're the ones that are making sure that we work with Business Development Canada to create opportunities for small businesses. They are the ones that led the charge, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to pipeline. All these initiatives will create jobs, Mr. Speaker. It's good for Alberta. It is good for Canada.
Honourable Member for Sudbury.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, Heritage Canada concluded a series of roundtables on official languages with a view to putting in place a new government action plan. These pan-Canadian consultations are an example of the leadership of our government on official languages. Can the Minister of Canadian Heritage give us some other examples of the government's accomplishments on this file over the past year? The Honourable Minister. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for his question. I'm proud of our government's leadership on official languages, and I will give you some examples. A return of the Francophone information program, judges, the return of the military college in Saint-Jean, and the service delivery initiative. We are committed, my colleague at Public Safety and I, on ensuring that new RCMP members working security on the Hill are bilingual. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, last week the Minister of Transport received a very clear letter from Lake Megantic. The federal government can help Lake Megantic if it really wants to. 3 years after the tragedy, suffering has not gone away, and the wounds are reopened every time a train goes through. Instead of shifting responsibility onto local officials who have to live with this tragedy on a daily basis, can the minister do what the people of Lake Megantic want him to do, show leadership, take charge, and stop the trains from whistling through the downtown of Lake Megantic? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, there is no other issue that is so important to me as Lake Megantic. I held a public forum. I listened to the people there. I know that they want a bypass. I met with citizens groups on 3 separate occasions. Yesterday in the evening, I spoke to the mayor, Mayor Cloutier. I committed to help and to look into accelerating the process. I know that the province of Quebec is responsible for the environmental assessment, but this is a very important issue that we are very keen to resolve quickly. The Honourable Member. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following my question of last Friday, we clearly understood that people who've waited 20 years for cell phones were going to have to wait a long time more because the government has no plan. And it's not just out in the back 40 that people have no network. A mere 5 minutes from the center of town, we end up in areas where there's no signal. It's as if the technology didn't even exist. When will the government be ready to listen to people in rural ridings, rural areas, who have solutions? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for a very thoughtful question. Of course, this is a very important issue. We've been talking about innovation agenda. Within that context, we need to have a strong and vibrant telecommunications sector that can provide this kind of service to our constituents. That's why we're working very closely with them to make sure we have additional investments to provide more choice and availability of service. We're working on spectrum and to make sure that we maximize the possibility of spectrum there to be able to provide solutions in these rural and remote regions and where there's connections and the issues around connection, Mr. Speaker. And we're going to make sure we address this issue in a meaningful way.
The Honourable Member for Tobique-Mactaquac.
Mr. Speaker, one of the challenges facing Atlantic Canada is finding ways to welcome new Canadians, growing our communities and strengthening our economies. As one of 32 Atlantic MPs from the rural riding of Tobique-Mactaquac, ensuring economic growth is a main priority. Can the Minister of Immigration please update this House on the details of the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Project and how communities can be involved in its success? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Immigration.
I thank the member for his very hard work on this issue because engaging communities is at the very heart of the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Project. We know that the key to retaining newcomers is helping them successfully build their lives and put down roots in the Atlantic region. For example, we've just learned about a catering company in Moncton started by Syrian refugee women with support from the local community and local businesses. This is why the pilot project will mobilize communities and bring together businesses, schools, student groups, municipalities and volunteers to welcome and help integrate new families.
Honourable Member for Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are bungling the replacement of Canada's search and rescue aircraft. Cascade Aerospace, one of Abbotsford's largest employers, has proposed saving the taxpayers $1.5 billion by completely modernizing the current fleet of Hercules aircraft. It now appears the Liberals have refused to consider that proposal. This decision will kill hundreds of jobs in Abbotsford and will cost Canadian taxpayers dearly. Why won't the Defence Minister stand up for BC jobs and protect Canadian taxpayers?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I proudly stand up for BC and all of Canada. Our search and rescue is a critical component of this for Canada. This is a project that was started in 2004. And I'm proud to say that this government is going to get this done because Canada needs to have a very sound search and rescue capability, and this is one promise that we plan to keep. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member. Order. member for Saanich Gulf Islands. Order.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Aujourd'hui,
Today, representatives from the Citizens Coalition from Lake Megantic are in Ottawa. In 2013, the member for Papineau signed their petition in favor of the building of a bypass in Lake Megantic. Today, they have a clear message for the Prime Minister. Please honor the election commitment to build a bypass. My question is clear.
The Honourable Minister des Transports.
The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, without repeating myself, I know, we know, our government knows, the Prime Minister knows, we all know that the people of Lake Megantic were deeply traumatized by the tragedy in 2013, where 47 of their fellow citizens lost their lives. I visited the city on 3 separate occasions myself. I met with people. I listened to them. I'm working on the file conscientiously. We want to accelerate the process if we can, but we have to do our homework, and once we have news, we will announce it.
This will conclude question period for today. The Honourable Member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley is standing on a point of order.
Thank you very much,
Member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley, and then I'll hear from the member.
Point of order arising out of question period, and in a moment I'll ask for unanimous consent to table a document. The Minister of Democratic Institutions claimed in question period that Canadians did not have to provide their personal data in order to participate in the My Democracy exercise. Personal information like income, gender, postal code, etc. But the privacy statement on our own website claims the following: while answering the profile questions is optional, not answering these questions will result in your input not...
Yeah, the Honourable Member is getting into a debate, but I'd ask him to get to his request for unanimous consent if he has one. Get to the point of order, please.
The very last sentence says, this is the tabling that I wish to do, Mr. Speaker. While answering the profile questions is optional, not answering these questions will result in your input not being included as part of the overall study results of the study. I'm not sure what Liberals meant by participation and consultation, but
I asked the member to come forward with his request. I didn't hear it. The Honourable Member for Barrie Ennisfil.
Mr. Speaker, and I wasn't going to rise on this point of order today, but after